Whether truth is defined more empirically as the conformity of thought and being, or more idealistically as the conformity of being with thought, it is, in either case, important carefully to note what is meant by being. And in formulating the answer to this question, it is likewise important to take heed lest the knowing spirit be tricked into losing itself in the indeterminate, so that it fantastically becomes a something that no existing human being ever was or can be, a sort of phantom with which the individual occupies himself upon occasion, but without making it clear to himself, in terms of dialectical intermediaries, how he happens to get into this fantastic realm, what significance being there has for him, and whether the entire activity that goes on out there does not resolve itself into a tautology within a recklessly fantastic venture of thought. If being, in the two indicated definitions, is understood as empirical being, truth is at once transformed into a desideratum, and everything must be understood in terms of becoming, for the empirical object is unfinished, and the existing cognitive spirit is itself in process of becoming. Thus the truth becomes an approximation whose beginning cannot be posited absolutely, precisely because the conclusion is lacking, the effect of which is retroactive. Whenever a beginning is made, on the other hand, unless through being unaware of this the procedure stamps itself as arbitrary, such a beginning is not a consequence of an immanent movement of thought, but is effected through a resolution of the will, essentially in the strength of faith, that the knowing spirit is an existing individual spirit, and that every human being is such an entity existing for himself, is a truth I cannot too often repeat, for the fantastic neglect of this is responsible for much confusion. Let no one misunderstand me. I happen to be a poor existing spirit, like all other men, but if there is any lawful and honest manner in which I could be helped into becoming something extraordinary, like the pure I am I, for example, I always stand ready gratefully to accept the gift and the benefaction. But if it can only be done in the manner indicated, by saying ein sui dre cocolorum, or by tying a string around the little finger, and then when the moon is full, hiding it in some secret place, in that case I prefer to remain what I am, a poor existing human being. The term being, as used in the above definitions, must therefore be understood from the systematic standpoint much more abstractly, presumably as the abstract reflection of, or the abstract prototype for, what being is as concrete empirical being. When so understood, there is nothing to prevent us from abstractly determining the truth as abstractly finished and complete, for the correspondence between thought and being is, from the abstract point of view, always finished. Only with the concrete does becoming enter in, and it is from the concrete that abstract thought abstracts. But if being is understood in this manner, the formula becomes a tautology. Thought and being mean one and the same thing, and the correspondence spoken of is merely an abstract self-identity. Neither formula says anything more than that the truth is, so understood as to accentuate the copula. The truth is, i.e., the truth is a reduplication. Truth is the subject of the assertion, but the assertion that it is the same as the subject. For this being that the truth is said to have is never its own abstract form. In this manner we give expression to the fact that truth is not something simple, but is in a wholly abstract sense a reduplication which is nevertheless instantly revoked. Abstract thought may continue as long as it likes to rewrite this thought in varying phraseology. It will never get any farther. As soon as the being which corresponds to the truth comes to be empirically concrete, the truth is put in process of becoming, and is again, by way of anticipation, the conformity of thought with being. This conformity is actually realized for God, but it is not realized for any existing spirit, who is himself existentially in process of becoming. For an existing spirit, qua existing spirit, the question of the truth will again exist. The abstract answer has significance only for the abstraction into which an existing spirit is transformed when he abstracts from himself qua existing individual. This can be done only momentarily, and even in such moments of abstraction, the abstract thinker pays his debt to existence by existing, in spite of all abstraction. It is therefore an existing spirit who is now conceived as raising the question of truth, presumably in order that he may exist in it. But in any case, the question is raised by someone who is conscious of being a particular existing human being. In this way, I believe I can render myself intelligible to every Greek, as well as to every reasonable human being. If a German philosopher wishes to indulge a passion for making himself over, and just as alchemists and necromancers were wont to garb themselves fantastically, first makes himself over into a super-rational something for the purpose of answering this question of the truth in an extremely satisfactory manner, the affair is no concern of mine. Nor is his extremely satisfactory answer, which is no doubt very satisfactory indeed, when you are fantastically transformed. On the other hand, whether it is or is not the case that a German professor behaves in this manner can be readily determined by anyone who will concentrate enthusiastically upon seeking guidance at the hands of such a sage, without criticism, but seeking merely to assimilate the wisdom in a docile spirit by proposing to shape his own life in accordance with it. Precisely when thus enthusiastically attempting to learn from such a German professor, one would realize the most apt of epigrams upon him. For such a speculative philosopher could hardly be more embarrassed than by the sincere and enthusiastic zeal of a learner who proposes to express and to realize his wisdom by appropriating it existentially. For this wisdom is something that the Herr Professor has merely imagined and written books about, but never himself tried. I.e., it has never occurred to him that this should be done, like the custom clerk who writes what he could not himself read, satisfied that his responsibilities ended with the writing. So there are speculative philosophers who write what, when it is to be read in the light of action, shows itself to be nonsense, unless it is perhaps intended only for fantastic beings. In that the question of truth is thus raised by an existing spirit, qua existing, the above abstract reduplication that is involved in it again confronts him. But existence itself, namely, existence as it is in the individual who raises the question and himself exists, keeps the two moments of thought and being apart, so that reflection presents him with two alternatives. For an objective reflection, the truth becomes an object, something objective, and thought must be pointed away from the subject. For a subjective reflection, the truth becomes a matter of appropriation, of inwardness, of subjectivity, and thought must probe more and more deeply into the subject and his subjectivity. But then what? Shall we be compelled to remain in this disjunction? Or may we not here accept the offer of benevolent assistance from the principle of mediation, so that the truth becomes an identity of subject and object? Well, why not? But can the principle of mediation also help the existing individual, while still remaining in existence himself, to become the mediating principle, which is sub specie aeterni, whereas the poor existing individual is confined to the straitjacket of existence? Surely it cannot do any good to mock a man, luring him on by dangling before his eyes the identity of subject and object, when his situation prevents him from making use of his identity, since he is in process of becoming in consequence of being an existing individual. How can it help to explain to a man how the eternal truth is to be understood eternally, when the supposed user of the explanation is prevented from so understanding it through being an existing individual, and merely becomes fantastic when he imagines himself to be sub specie aeterni? What such a man needs instead is precisely an explanation of how the eternal truth is to be understood in determinations of time, by one who, as existing, is himself in time, which even the worshipful Herr Professor concedes, if not always, at least once a quarter when he draws his salary. The identity of subject and object, posited through an application of the principle of mediation, merely carries us back to where we were before, to the abstract definition of the truth as an identity of thought and being. For to determine the truth as an identity of thought and object is precisely the same thing as saying that the truth is, i.e., that the truth is a reduplication. The lofty wisdom has thus again merely been absent-minded enough to forget that it was an existing spirit who asked about the truth. Or is the existing spirit himself the identity of subject and object, the subject-object? In that case, I must press the question of where such an existing human being is, when he is thus at the same time also a subject-object. Or shall we perhaps here again first transform the existing spirit into something in general, and thereupon explain everything except the question asked, namely, how an existing subject is related to the truth in concreto? Explain everything except the question that must in the next instance be asked, namely, how a particular existing spirit is related to this something in general, which seems to have not a little in common with a paper kite, or with a lump of sugar, which the Dutch used to hang up under the loft for all to lick at.